Today we're going over Chapter 19 of the Silmarillion, of Beren and Luthien. If you're new here, welcome to Our Halfling. We talk about Lord of the Rings and a little bit about D&D, so let's get to it. So this chapter begins saying that this is a tale that is remembered for many years, that it's told in a much longer form elsewhere, and here it's told with fewer words. And we begin with a kind of a recap of Badahir, and that he refuses to leave Dorthonion, and that Morgoth continues to send attack after attack after attack until Badahir is left with just 12 brave, fearless men. And they go off to hide near Tar an Ailuin, which is believed to have been made by Melian herself. And here they are in hiding, and Morgoth cannot find them. He cannot figure out where they're at. So he tells Sauron to go find Badahir, find his men, and to kill them. Well, one of Badahir's bravest, fearless, and most desperate men was Gorlim, son of Angrim, whose wife was Eilinel, and he wasn't sure if she was killed or taken, because when he goes to his home after an attack, he sees that his home is completely destroyed, plundered, and gone. But he has this small bit of hope that maybe his wife was able to flee before the attack, and maybe she'll come back to their home looking for him. And so Gorlim often comes back to his home, and this is something that gets back to Morgoth and to Sauron. And so one autumn night, when Gorlim goes to visit his home, Sauron has sent a band of orcs, and Gorlim sees this vision of light and what he believes is his wife in their home, just grieving, mourning, looking like she is just starved, and crying out, saying that her husband has forsaken her. And at this moment, Gorlim gives out this loud cry of anguish, and bam, the vision vanishes. His wife is gone. He feels hands upon him. Orcs have now taken him and are taking him back to Sauron, where he's to be tortured, and they try to find out where Badahir is. But Gorlim refuses to speak, refuses to betray betray Badahir. And then they offer him the one thing that he wants, to be reunited with his wife. And so Gorlim, now tired and desperate and longing for his wife, agrees to reveal where Badahir is. So he's taken to Sauron, and Sauron looks at Gorlim and he says, what's the price? What exactly are you wanting to reveal where Badahir is? And Gorlim says that he just wants to be reunited with his wife. At this point, he now believes that his wife is alive and that she's in captivity under Sauron, just like he is. And so he believes that if he tells Sauron where Badahir is, then he can be reunited with his wife. Well, Sauron just kind of smiles and says, all right, well, this is a small price for such a great betrayal, but sure, we'll do that. Tell me where Badahir is. And it says that Gorlim would have refused, but looking into Sauron's eyes, he can't, and reveals where Badahir is. When Sauron just laughs, saying that, his wife's dead. All he saw was just a phantom, just a vision, an illusion, nothing. His wife is dead. But Sauron will keep his word, and he will reunite him with his wife. And here he kills Gorlim. Well, during this time, Badahir, his location is revealed, and he's with his men, except for one. He sent Beren off to go and search out, what the enemy is up to. So Morgoth, during this time, sends a group of orcs after Badahir to kill them. And Beren, while sleeping, is given this dream of carrion birds sitting, it says, thickly on these trees, all with blood dripping from their beaks. And then he sees this ghost of Gorlim, who reveals his betrayal, and that he needs to go and warn his father. And so immediately Beren wakes up and he goes after his father, and there he sees carrion birds on the ground. They fly up to the trees, and it says that they mock him, like they're just sitting there just croaking and mocking him because he's arrived too late. It says he buries his father's bones and raises a cairn above him and swears an oath of vengeance in this moment. And so Beren goes off after the orcs that have slain his father, and there he finds their camp at Rivel's Well above the Fen of Surek. And Beren is being very stealthy in this moment, very quiet, and kind of just listens. And here he hears the captain of the orcs sort of bragging about what they've done, holding Barahir's hand that bears the ring of Finrad, and says, that this will be a great token for Sauron. And in this moment, Beren just jumps out, attacks the captain, kills him, takes his father's hand, and escapes. And it says that fate was on his side in this moment, and he was able to escape and get away. And it says that for 4 years, Beren wanders Dorthonion as a single outlaw. And he befriends all the birds and animals who end up helping him. And so therefore he basically just becomes a vegetarian and only kills those that are under the service of Morgoth. And it says that Beren doesn't fear death. He doesn't care at this point. He just doesn't want to be held a prisoner. He doesn't want to be held in captivity. And at this moment, Morgoth has sent out a bounty, basically put a bounty on Beren's head that's as high as the bounty he has on Fingon. But orcs don't really want to mess with Beren. And so instead of attacking him, they kind of just flee from him and get away. And because of this, Sauron is then sent with an army to go after Beren. Since, the orcs aren't doing anything, Sauron's going to go with his werewolves, which are wolves that are inhabited by dark spirits that Sauron has imprisoned into these wolves. And so eventually, Beren is basically forced to flee the area that he's in and to go into the regions of Ered Gorgroth, where he's able to see Doriath and realizes, I've got to go there. I've got to go to Doriath. No man has ever entered this land, but I don't have a choice. That's the only place I can go at this point. And so it says that he climbs down the sheer precipices of Ered Gorgroth, which was no small feat, and then he travels through Dungortheb, where Sauron's sorcery meets Melion's girdle. And basically, this area is just filled with dreadful spiders, just madness. Is just a place of full evil. And so there's very little telling of how Beren got from this point into Doriath, because basically Beren refuses to tell this tale because it brings back too much horror to his mind. And so somehow or another, Beren finds and gets through the mazes into Doriath, and the way that Melion said would happen. She kind of foretold this. And so here we're told that Beren has been wandering for a while and that he looks pretty rough. He's stumbling. He looks gray with age and just forlorn and just tired. He's definitely stressed out at this point. And he's under just years of torment. And it says in the summer, he's wandering around through Neldoreth when he sees Luthien. And it says that in this moment that he sees her, all of his pain and weariness just fades away. He forgets about all of it, and he's just under an enchantment and just focuses on Luthien, whom he calls Tinuviel Nightingale. So Luthien is the daughter of Thingol and Melion. She's described as being the most beautiful of all the children of Iluvatar. She wears this, this blue gown, this blue raiment with a covering that had golden flowers sewn in. She had gray eyes and this dark black hair. And she's dancing in the moonlight near the glades of Escalduin, and she's just the most beautiful thing that Beren has ever seen. And it says that as soon as he sees her, though, she's gone. She vanishes. And Beren just becomes lost under the spell, looking for Tinuvia, looking for this nightingale. And mind you, this was this was during summer. And it says that near the dawn of spring, so he's already been traveling for like summer, fall, winter, and now we're at the dawn of spring, and he sees Luthien again, who now begins dancing on this green glade and begins singing. And it says that the song is just beautiful and just glorious, and that with her song, it basically ends winter and spring comes, that the ice on the water fades or melts, and then the water begins to flow again, and flowers begin to bloom around her. And Beren, who's been described as like tied down and he can't do anything, is now able to call out to Tenovio, call out to Luthien, and she hears him, and she doesn't flee this time, and she stays, and he's able to come to her. And it says that in the moment that she sees him, she's under the doom, and she falls madly in love with him, and she's in his arms, and then slips away, and she's gone again. And Beren, he's just exhausted, just falls to the ground, falls asleep, and when he wakes up, he's cold, and his heart is just aching for her. Well, now Beren and Luthien's fates are completely tied together, and it says that now she shares in his mortality. Even though she's immortal, she's now bound to him. She shares his mortality, and she's now going to live through an anguish greater than any of the elderly have ever known. Well, eventually, it says that Luthien does return back to Beren, where she lays her hands on him, and that she would often come and visit Beren. They would walk in the woods and, in secret, and they were just filled with such love and joy in this moment from spring to summer, and had so much joy greater than any of the children of Luvatar. However, another person also loved Luthien, Daron, who had seen Luthien with Beren and basically went and tattled to Thingol about this. Well, no surprise, Thingol's really upset by this. He cherishes Luthien over everything in his possession, and he's not going to give her to a man who he despises over everything else. So Thingol goes to talk to Luthien about it. He goes as this like loving and caring father, and promises like, hey, just tell me what's going on. I'm not going to hurt him or kill him, I promise, or imprison him. And so Luthien just kind of stays quiet about this, doesn't really say anything, but Thingol ends up sending his servants to go and grab Beren, but Luthien gets there first and takes Beren to the throne of Thingol, not as a prisoner, but as an honored guest. And of course, this makes Thingol very upset. And Melian is just silent in this moment. And Thingol says, like, who do you think you are? You're a thief. You're a man in my home. Why do you think you have any worth to approach me at my throne? Well, Beren is scared. He doesn't know what's going on. This whole thing is just, he's tired, he's scared, and he's also looking at the wonder of Menegroth, and so he has nothing to say. And so Luthien picks up for him and says, this is Beren, the son of Badahir, the one that we've all heard many tales of. And Thingol's like, yeah, hush up, I want to hear from Beren. Beren needs to be the one to talk. Why should I not kill you? You're the only mortal to ever enter my kingdom. Why shouldn't I kill you? Well, Beren, now looks to Luthien, looks at Melian, and suddenly feels like these words are being put into his mouth. He feels no longer scared, but filled with the pride of the eldest house of men. And he says that, that fate has led him here, and that, he's now found the most precious and beautiful thing in Arda, and that there is nothing, not even Morgoth, that's going to keep him away from Luthien, that she's the fairest of all the children of Iluvatar. Well, now everyone in the room is scared for Beren, because they're like, oh no, he's going to die. Thingol's going to kill him. And Thingol speaks very slowly and intentionally and says, like, if it wasn't for the oath that I made very impulsively earlier, you would be dead right now. And Beren says, sure, you know what? You can kill me if you want, even if it's unearned. But you're not going to call me a thief. You're not going to call me by these other names. I am the son of Badahir, who is friend, who saved Finrad Falagan, who wears the ring of the house of Finarfin, and that no one in my home, in my house, has earned the name of thief or any other foul name that should be called to us by any elf or king. And, Beren now, like, holds the ring up high. And so everybody can now see the badge of the House of Finarfin. And Melian now speaks, and she whispers to Thingol, like, hey, Beren's going to die, not by you, and that now your guys' fates are entwined together, and you need to be very careful what happens next. And Thingol just looks at Luthien, believing that, basically, that this mortal man is not worthy of her, not good enough for her. And so Thingol says that, yeah, I see the ring about here, and that's great, but that's not the thing that you should, rest on, just the name of your father, that it's not enough to win, his daughter's hand. And Thingol says that he too desires something that he cannot have. But if Beren can retrieve one of the Silmarils from the Iron Crown of Morgoth and bring it back to Thingol, then, if Luthien so desires, he can marry his daughter. And here, because of this, Thingol has now brought his own doom. He's now entwined himself with the doom of the Noldor, with the doom of Mondos. And everyone recognizes that while Thingol is holding to his oath that he himself will not kill Beren, he's essentially sent Beren off to go do something that's going to get him killed anyway. So, like, technically he hasn't killed Beren, but he sent Beren to his death. So, okay. And Beren just laughs at this and says, like, what a small price for your daughter that you're asking me to go and get something that's, like, crafted by hand, and you think that's more valuable than your daughter? Like, okay, like, sure, I'll go and get the Silmaril for you. That's fine. And I will next time you see me, I'll have a Silmaril for you, and believe me, you're gonna see me again. And Beren just looks at Melian for a second, looks at Luthien, says his farewell, bows to Thingol, pushes aside the guards, and leaves Menegroth alone. And it says that, Melian turns to Thingol saying, like, oh, you think you're really clever, don't you? Like, I see what you did there, but you idiot. You've doomed all of us. And either you or our daughter is going to die. Like, we're doomed. So, good job. And Thingol's like, oh, I'm not worried about it. It's fine. I'm not going to give my most loved and cherished possession, his daughter, to some man, and he's going to die on this mission anyway, so I'm not worried about it. Well, Luthien is very quiet, and it says that she never sings in Doriath ever again. So Beren leaves Doriath, no issues, it's fine, and he's kind of unsure where to go, so, he climbs, and he sees the guarded plains and decides, like, Nargothrond, that's... I need help. That's where I'm going to go. And so he, reaches the area around Nargothrond, and he knows that he's being watched. He can't see anybody, but it's called the Guarded Plain for a reason. So he knows he's being watched. So the entire time, he's holding up his hand with the ring, saying, that he's Beren, son of Barahir. He's friend of the king. Take me to the king. And so, yeah, he doesn't see anybody, but, there are hunters there, and they're like, okay, we're going to take him to the king. So he's led to Finrad, and when they get there, Finrad instantly recognizes the son of Barahir. Like, he doesn't need to see the ring. He sees the resemblance, and he's good. And so him and Beren go off into another room, and they talk in private, and Beren tells Finrad everything that has taken place and everything that's happened, and, what he now needs to do. And Finrad, in hearing this, like, knows that Thingol wants him dead, and knows that, like, this isn't going to end well. And he also knows that it will bring his own death, but he's bound by his oath, and he has to keep, the oath that he made to Barahir. So Finrad, tells Beren, like, Thingol wants you dead. That's what's going to happen. And that it seems that the curse of Feanor is at work again, that it's, been awakened. And that just saying, like, Thingol just saying that he desires the Silmarils has brought hatred and doom his way, and that the sons of Feanor will destroy anything and everything to get those gems, that they feel that the gems belong only in the house of Feanor, and that even now Celegorm and Curufin are here in Nargothrond. And that even though they've been cordial, and appreciative of Finrad's aid, that once they learn what Beren is trying to do, like, it, gloves are off. They are going to want the Silmaril for themselves. But Finrad says, I'm bound to my oath, though, and I'm going to help you. So Finrad Falagan goes and tells his whole kingdom what he's about to do, which I still find a little confusing, but he reveals that he's going to go help Beren retrieve one of the Silmarils in front of everybody, including Celegorm and Curufin. So Celegorm and Curufin are obviously really upset by this because they feel the Silmarils belong to them. And so they say, be he friend or foe, whether demon of Morgoth or elf or child of men or any other living thing in Arda, neither law nor love nor league of hell nor might of the Valar nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from pursuing hate of Feanor's sons, if he take or find a Silmaril and keep it, for the Silmarils we alone claim until the world's end. So basically, like, sure, he can go and get the Silmaril, but he better give it back to us. So Celegorm and Curufin, it says that they say many other things that are just as powerful as the words that Feanor spoke to the Noldor to build up the rebellion. And that then they speak very softly and give everyone in the hall a vision of what is to happen to Nargothrond. That they all see this vision of Nargothrond being completely destroyed. And it instills so much fear in the people that until Turin, nobody goes into open battle in Nargothrond. Like, they all stay out of everything for a while. And because of this, they also turn away from Finrad. That they're like, well, he's not a Valar. We don't have to listen to him. And basically, the curse is now taking action on Celegorm and Curufin and everybody else in the room. And Celegorm and Curufin kind of believe that, like, you know what, we can take the throne. We can overtake Finrad. He's going to die going with Beren, so we can take over. And Falagan, seeing the shift in his own people, takes his crown off and throws it to the ground and says, fine, if you guys are going to be so quick to, change your loyalty with me, then fine, be that as it may, I am going to stay loyal to the oath that I made to brought it here. Well, there were 10 of his kinsmen of elves that remained loyal to Finrad, one of them being Edrahil, and he goes and takes up the crown, holds it up, and asks that the crown be given to a steward because he still sees Finrad as king, and when he returns, he'll be king. And so the crown is given to Ordredreth, who basically is in charge and is governing until the hopeful return of Finrad. Well, Celegorm and Curufin, they say nothing, and they just smile as they leave the hall. So one autumn evening, Finrad, Beren, and his 10 loyal begin to leave, and they journey near the river Naurag. And they come upon a company of orcs. They quickly slay them, no big deal. They take their gear, take their weapons, everything seems fine. And then Finrad casts kind of a spell on the group so that they all now look like orcs. And they can now travel through Sauron's area, hopefully undetected. Well, the thing is that Sauron instantly knew that they were fakes because they were going through too quickly and they did not come in to report what they've been doing like all the other orcs were told to do. And so Sauron knew instantly that, like, these aren't real orcs. And so he sends a group of servants out to the small company to capture them and to bring them to him. And here we get the grand contest of Sauron and Finrad Falagan. And there's this long poem in the chapter, and basically it describes this fantastical battle of magic and wizardry and each are taking different forms and shapes and fighting one another, and it's just this grand fight, but that the doom of Mondos is still on Finrad Falagan, and therefore Finrad falls before the throne. And it says that Sauron removes the disguise on everybody, and everyone is now lying here naked and afraid. And he throws them into a pit and tells them that unless they tell him who they are and what they're doing here, what their purpose is, he's going to kill them off one by one. And so they're all in this dark, gloomy pit, and all they can see are these glowing eyes. And before they know it, a werewolf appears and eats one of their companions, and yet none will betray their lord. So at this time that Sauron has now thrown Beren into a pit, Luthien is instantly filled with this horror, fearing for Beren. And so she goes to her mother Melion and asks for advice on what, needs to be done next. And here she learns that Beren is in the pits of Tol in Godhath in Sauron's tower with no hope. There's no hope that anybody's going to rescue him. And so Luthien, for whatever reason, goes to Daron for help, but obviously he goes and tattles to Thingol about what's happening. And so Thingol now becomes very scared of what Luthien's going to do next and decides, I'm going to imprison her. And so Thingol basically has like a tree house built in their largest tree near the gates of Menegroth called Hirelorn. And he built this like big tree house for her in one of the large trunks of this tree. And they take the ladders away so that she's essentially in this tower where she can't escape. And that only servants of Thingol will come up and bring her whatever she needs, when she needs it. But that's kind of it. And so Luthien is obviously like, I got to get out of here, and tries to escape. So she casts a spell on her hair that causes it to grow exceedingly. And then she has a robe or like a cloak that she also enchants with like this sleeping spell, and she wraps it around the end of her hair so that when her hair falls out of her tower and it kind of just grazes on the guards sitting next to or sitting by the tree, that they are now cast into deep slumber, and she's able to climb out, and she covers herself with this cloak that basically casts this like shadow about her, and she's able to escape Doriath completely unseen. And at this time, Celegorm and Curufin are in the guarded plains. Because of everything that's happened, Sauron is now sending out wolves to attack, and so Celegorm and Curufin grab their hounds and they ride off to hunt these wolves. Well, the chief of these wolf hounds was Hound, who was not a like regular hound of Middle Earth, but instead was this like god-like hound of Valinor, who was given to Celegorm by Orome long before the rebellion and everything. And when Celegorm, is thrown into exile and leaves Valinor, Hound follows him as a faithful companion and remains faithful to him. And so therefore Hound also falls under the doom of the Noldor. And it says that he too would die, but not before fighting the mightiest of wolves to ever walk the world. It's Hound who's the one to find Luthien, and that her cloak is basically like no good against his Valar senses. I guess he's not Valar, against his godlike senses. And so he brings Luthien to Celegorm. And when Luthien realizes who Celegorm is, that he's a Noldor, an enemy of Morgoth, she's glad. She's like, oh great, I found aid. So she removes her cloak, revealing her true beauty, and instantly Celegorm is just enamored by her and is like, yeah, I'll help you. Let's go to Nargothrond so I can help you. He doesn't tell her that he knows anything about Beren and that he'll take her to Nargothrond and give her aid. And so they leave the hunt and they go to Nargothrond, where Luthien, of course, is betrayed. And Celegorm and Curufin are like, we're going to take that cloak. Thank you very much. You cannot leave the gates and don't speak to anybody. And so now she's a prisoner in Nargothrond. And they believe that, Finrad and Beren obviously have to be dead. And so they're going to convince Thingol that Celegorm should marry Luthien. And all this is going to do is strengthen their forces, because they refuse to go and retrieve the Silmarils without knowing that they have a strong enough force behind them. And a marriage with Luthien will just aid them in that strength. And so, and they've already swayed the people of Nargothrond, so they kind of figure like it'll be easy to sway Thingol, and so they send messengers out to Thingol. However, Hound, who is a pure and loving creature and such a good boy, instantly fell in love with Luthien as soon as he met her, and was sad when, she was put in captivity. And it says that he would often come to her room and lay with her and lay by her door, and that he knew that some evil had now come into Nargothrond. And it says that Luthien would often speak to Hound about Beren, about Morgoth, about everything, and that he understood everything that she said, but that he couldn't reply back, that he was only permitted to speak 3 times or else he dies. And so, being the good boy that he is, Hound makes a plan to rescue Luthien, and he goes in the middle of night, retrieves her cloak, takes it to her, and speaks to her and tells her of his plan to get her out of here. And so, in the middle of night, he takes Luthien through secret paths and is able to get her out of Nargothrond, and they flee to the north. And it says that he, humbles himself and lets go of his pride so that Luthien can ride on his back, so that they can move faster, because he is a fast, good boy and very tireless. And so they're able to, flee very quickly. And in Sauron's tower at this point, Beren and Finrad now lay in this dark pit alone, that all of the other companions are all now dead. And Sauron figures that Finrad is a High Noldor, but he doesn't know exactly who he is. And so his plan is to leave him for last to figure out what the purpose is that they're here. And so a wolf comes out for Beren. However, Finrad uses all of his power and might to break free of his chains and to attack the wolf with his bare hands and teeth, and is able to kill the wolf, but also mortally wounds himself. And Finrad's final words to Beren are, "I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls beyond the seas and the mountains of Aman. It will be long ere I am seen among the Noldor again, and it may be that we shall not meet a second time in death or life, for the fates of our kindreds are apart. Farewell." And so in the dark, Finrad dies in the tower that he himself had built, and has now fulfilled his oath in aiding Beren. And Beren now just sits beside him and mourns. And during the same hour, Luthien has now come to the bridge near the tower, and that leads to Sauron's tower, and she sings this song that rings clear through the tower of Sauron, that it penetrates every wall, and it's heard by Beren, who believes that this is just a dream. And he sings a song of challenge that he has made in honor of the 7 stars, the sickle of the Valar, that were the sign from Varda of the fall of Morgoth. And then it says that all the strength just leaves Beren and he falls. Luthien, however, hears the response and now sings even louder and stronger, so that the wolves howl and the tower trembles, and Sauron smiles, knowing that voice, knowing that he has now heard the daughter of Melion. And to capture her and to give her to Morgoth would be fantastic. He would get a great reward for that. And so Sauron sends wolves out to capture Luthien. And one by one, Hound slays them silently, with the last and greatest of Sauron's werewolves being Draugluin. And that fight was long and fierce, but Draugluin escapes, retreats back to Sauron, saying, "Hound is there." And Sauron knows who Hound is and decides that he needs to fight him, and so he changes himself into a wolf, making him the mightiest wolf to ever walk the world, and goes to fight Hound himself. Now, seeing Sauron's wolf form, Hound leaps aside in horror at this, and Sauron takes this moment to leap after Luthien, who now faints at the sight and smell of evil on him. And as she does this, she kind of flicks her cloak up so that it kind of glides over Sauron's eyes, causing him to stumble and feel drowsy. And in this moment, Hound is able to attack. And a great fight now takes place between Hound and Sauron. That it says that it could be heard over the mountains of Ered Wethrin through the valley, that they could hear the cries and the howls from these two fighting, and that no strength or wizardry of Sauron could ever overpower Hound of Valinor, and that Hound is able to take Sauron by the throat, and Sauron's now shifting forms between, a wolf, a snake, a monster of his own creation, and at no point does Hound let go of his throat. And so Luthien now comes to the ensnared Sauron and says that unless he chooses to go back to Morgoth in a naked spirit form doomed to endure the glaring eyes of Morgoth, he should just yield to her and give her mastery over the tower. And Sauron's like, yes, I'll do that. And Luthien is now given control over the tower, and Hound lets go of Sauron, who immediately changes himself into a vampire and as a great cloud with blood dripping from his throat, leaves to Tar Nufuin and now fills that area with his horrors and dread. And so now Luthien stands on the bridge and declares her control over the tower and over this area, and all the gates now open, the walls are open, the moonlight is able to come through, and anybody that's been entrapped, is now able to leave, except Beren never comes out. So Luthien and Hound now go in looking for him, and they find Beren lying on Finrad Falagan, and believing that Beren is dead, she goes and falls on him and falls into this dark forgetfulness. But seeing her light, Beren is now kind of pulled out of despair, picks her up, holds her in his arms, looks at her, and in this moment the sun rises and shines on both of their love for one another. And here they bury Finrad Falagan on the hilltop of the isle of his tower that's now been cleaned of all its horror, and his grave is left undisturbed for many years until the changing of the worlds and the destruction of the seas. And it ends with, but Finrad walks with Finarfin, his father, beneath the trees of Eldamar. So that is the end of the first part of Beren and Luthien, and I love it. I love it so much. And Hound is such a good boy. I love him so much. I don't want to give too many of my thoughts away, because we do still have a second half to come. And when we're done with that half, I'm going to do another drawing with the Halfling and spill all of my guts and thoughts about this chapter. I love it so much, and I hope you guys do too. And I hope you guys come back next week for the second half, because I'm so excited to get to the second half. So yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys have a wonderful and a blessed week, and may your homes be filled with food and cheer. Bye.